So for honors mentorship, we have to do this capstone research project and capstone presentation based around an essential question. And because I'm working in a Spanish 1 classroom this year, my question was, what's wrong with language education and how can we fix it in Hall County? So this is basically what I came up with. We do have a Kahoot, it's literally 2 questions. I'm not gonna force you to play, but it's literally 4 questions. And we're just gonna try to do it quickly so we can get the rest of the presentation going, but it's purely demonstration. As long as we have some people on it, it should be okay. Wait, who else trying to get on it? One.
I'm on.
Okay, so just let me know. I'll start it in like 30 seconds. You can always join in the middle. Again, it's 4 questions, it's not an emergency. Alright, cool, we're gonna start.
5.
Okay, it's 5 questions, might be. So how many bilingual Americans learned their second language in school?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's really low.
Yep. Wow, crazy, right? All of them are really low. Wow. Who would have thought? Ooh.
Oh.
Yes, only 7% of bilingual Americans have learned their second language in school. What's the purpose of education? And yeah, there is a right answer to this.
All of those aren't the right answer.
There's a right answer.
No, the right answer is to torture students.
Yeah, to improve national GDP, and we'll explain that a little bit later too. What percentage of Americans are bilingual? Definitely not 100%. In no way, shape, or form. 100%. 11? No. Think about like the diversity of the nation and how many people might be of mixed heritage.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah, only 25% of Americans are bilingual, and within that 25%, 7% of those learn their language in school. So if you're good at probability and statistics, that is a really, really low percent of total Americans who are bilingual because of school. Do you think you are bilingual?
What is your yes or no?
They're both right, so put whatever you actually think. Okay. And how many countries in Europe require more than 2 languages? So you have to study more than 2 languages. Yep, it's 13. So congrats to your boy Nate.
Hey, second place.
Do I get candy?
I don't know what just happened, but cool, we'll just continue from here. So I did a survey where I surveyed a bunch of people, like over 100, about the purpose of education, and this is what the results said. Most people said knowledge, some people said college, some people said work, learning social skills. This is the correct one, to improve your nation's GDP. And then someone wrote in to cause stress. So basically everyone was wrong except for a very slim percentage of people, because the purpose of education is to improve GDP. That's why the government provides it. If it's not going to help the nation in the long run, the government wouldn't pay for it. Same with roads. You know, if roads didn't do anything, we wouldn't buy them. So education, you have to go to school because the government wants to keep the development level high. It's public because government wants to keep the development high, and it's accessible. So that's the real purpose of education. But there's a specific purpose to language education too. The second language will double your opportunities. It will build economic and cultural value. So on top of the GDP we're adding by going to school, we're adding more GDP value by being bilingual and learning language. It also teaches skill, culture, understanding, and global citizenship. So language. Language is a lot of things. In short, even if you're not one of the people who's like, let's connect with people, travel the world, if you're in it for the money, the profit, the benefits it's gonna bring to you, language is a huge input in your salary. It's gonna improve your brain connections. It will build new cognitive pathways in your brain, and it will help you if you're gonna be a global business person or even just a citizen of the world, which honestly, in the new times of the world with the internet and things, we are all global citizens. So this is American bilingualism. We are 25% multilingual, so that's bilingual and up, and 75% monolingual, and that comes from the Pew Research Center, so it's right. And globally, 56% of the world is bilingual, and 44% is monolingual. So 56 compared to 25. That's more than double America. So the rest of the world is beating us by 2. So what does that mean? It means that we're behind by a lot, by more than 25%. We're losing profit. In 2015, there were 630,000 jobs for bilingual speakers. No one really filled them. We're also losing jobs. There's 150% growth in the job market in 2015 alone for Spanish speakers. The growth is even larger for Mandarin. It's about the same for Arabic. And currently, the US has 14 million jobs outsourced. In India, they're speaking at least 2 languages. They're speaking English and their native dialect. They also might be speaking more than one native dialect or more than one second language. That's part of why outsourcing happens. Yes, the labor's cheaper, but they're often more skilled than we are, and we think of ourselves as incredibly educated. Outsourcing is only going to increase as businesses rely on global markets. So that's going to increase the global need and the global market for bilingual workers and leaders. So obviously there's a problem, and it's that Americans aren't learning language properly. Only 7% of the 25% that are bilingual learned in school. Like, that's a huge problem, because when you look at Spanish 1 classrooms, they're filled. They've got 35 kids in there, and that's the max. So who are we missing, and who's getting left behind? So I took a survey of what was the most important subject. English was ranked number 1. Math was ranked 2nd. Science was tied with math. And language is down there about 4th. So social studies was even behind language, and way at the bottom was the arts. And there's a lot of problems with all of that, but the first step to making things more important is making them be perceived as more important. So in order for us to do better at something, we have to think that it's more important. Everyone agrees that English is important. We speak it, we write emails in it, we communicate in it. We agree that math is important, even though we don't actually do it all that much. We still agree with it. So, in order to make us succeed better at languages, we need to think of language as more important and prioritize it. Additionally, I asked, do you think that language education and tolerance building has a high correlation? I said language builds tolerance, and these 46.5% of people agreed, and 27.3% of people strongly agreed. Now that's a solid majority. There were a couple people who heartily disagreed, and then there were a couple people who were neutral. I think that's because they didn't really understand what was going on, but I'm not going to read too much into that. But why is tolerance even important? Like, we live in America, we're number 1, people can come to us. Well, honestly, it's important to just understand and respect other people at the core of being a human being. But if you're not one of those people, profitability and global marketing. If you understand other cultures, then you won't make an advertisement in Saudi Arabia for a bikini. If you understand other cultures, you can understand why Mexican ads for Coca-Cola are going to be different than ads in Uganda. You can make more profit if you tailor your market, and that comes from understanding the basis of the humans you're trying to connect with, and that is language. I can't connect with you without knowing your name, without knowing your language, without being able to speak with you, and whether that's through sign language, body language, communication, just an eye contact. The way that we communicate with each other is language, first and foremost. So that's why it's important. For us as students, personal edification, making yourself better, also more competitive job opportunities. If you walk into a retail store and you're like, hey, I speak Spanish, at the Mall of Georgia, they need that. In Gainesville, they need that. The market is growing for you. For the America, that means we're improving our workforce and we're improving our global connection. So we're becoming more competitive as a nation. It works because language connects people to differences and learning goes hand in hand. And yeah, we do already have language education in the US, but what's the problem with it? How many of you guys would feel comfortable if someone just dropped you off in Cuba with no additional information, no background on the culture, nothing, and said, all right, have fun? Do you think that you could communicate? Do you think you know enough about the culture to survive? What job would you end up doing? All of these things are things that we should be semi-prepared for. Like, yes, we're not going on mission trips to Cuba and just getting dropped there and left forever, but we should be able to communicate with native speakers in their native environments after taking 4 or 5 years of a language-intensive class. So language education is missing the mark. America's way off. We start really late. We start in high school. That's too late. We're okay with complacency. You can say hola, good for you. That's not good enough. We focus on writing. How many of you guys wrote your first word before you spoke your first word? Just a show of hands. Yeah, 0. And there's a lack of standardization. What we're learning in here is different. What they're learning in Oklahoma is different from what they're learning in Alaska. And it's not connected to the real world. A lot of our language classes are, okay, you're gonna do this recording and that's done. Or, okay, we're gonna write this essay, and when you're in the job market, you're never gonna write an essay again, but that's what we're doing today. So we need to connect it to the real world and make it tangible. Now, WLA got a lot closer. They started young, they emphasized speaking, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a lack of grammar, you know? And there's a lack of technique. There's a finesse that's missing. There's a raw ability to communicate, but if you really listen to what some graduates are saying, some of the conjugation is wrong, some of the vocabulary is wrong, and there's just a misplaced kind of sentence structure sometimes. They're communicative, but not quite fluent. Well, Europe and China are a lot closer. They start young, they mandate learning it, they focus on speaking and writing, there's communication, and there's native and non-native teachers. Another thing that's important about Europe and China is there's a connection in the real world to other languages. I find that it's easier to become passionate about something when I know someone else who I can talk about it to, who I can talk to about it. So if I know that I can go to Mexico and talk to someone in Spanish, and I've actually done that before, I'm gonna be better at it. In Europe, that's literally a 2-hour car ride away. If I'm in Germany and I'm learning French, I just need to drive across the border and I can speak French. There's French-speaking people. It's saturated, but not so much in the United States. So that's a harder cultural thing for us to fix. That is not as easy as like flipping a light switch. So this is a video about these broadcasters who learned English and they're Chinese. We won't watch the whole thing, but basically what they did is they got ahead of the curve. But now in China, English learning is standard.
English since I was 5 years old, and that's many years ago. And at that time, actually in China, there are not many people who can speak English. I learned it the hard way, the school way, meaning that I go to class and then, I need to remember the words. I write it down, I recite it.
So just looking at this sentence, like, it's awkward, right? No one says, I accumulated my vocabulary database today. But we understand them. And if you can hear them, their accents are not thick. You can perfectly understand what words they're saying. And yeah, it's a little bit clunky, it's not native. They don't use slang, they're not saying, hey, what's up? But their English is really, really, really good. I think their English is better than my Spanish. I think a lot of us might agree with that. Their English is definitely better than my Chinese. But what one lady said was she used to go to the park and there was an English corner of the park where people could go and speak English to each other and other students could study together. And She said that's how she learned how to speak it, because she went to the park and spoke to other students who were studying it. So what China does is they start young, they mandate success. In order to do this, you have to be successful to move on. And they accommodate achievement. If you're really good at something, move on. Don't keep learning hola over and over again. Go on to something better. But improving the American education system isn't easy. People have been trying for years. It's not a magic wand. So how can we improve language easily and accessibly? So we need to start younger. That's gonna make immediate improvement. We learn to speak English when we're 1 or 2. If we learn to speak Spanish when we're 4 or 5, that's already a foundation that we have. And not only is our brain better, we get more practice and there's more motivation. If you're more emotionally connected to it, you're gonna do better. We also need to start small. It's really hard to learn language in a class of 35 kids where the teacher's struggling to learn your name, let alone your individual problems. We need to connect language to other important things. For me, language isn't just a word or vocabulary or conjugations. It's a way that I can communicate with people. It's a way I can connect with people. It's a way I can travel. It's a way of life. But for a lot of people, it's just a class that they're making me take in order to go to college. We also need to motivate. If there's no drive, there's not going to be improvement. If there's no reason to do better, why would you do better? Eventually, the motivation